The Get On Living Safely campaign is sponsoring this podcast to remind you to keep your spending in the community. Supporting local businesses keeps food on the table for our friends and neighbors. Follow them on social media and learn more at getonlivingsafely.com. Cindy Stuhr is a painter working in fluid acrylic paint. We talk about her experience as an elementary educator and what led her to picking up the brush, and how she sees herself working freely with the paint now that her creative outlet of teaching is past. You can find more conversations on our website, lacrosselocal.com. I'm Amy.
And I'm Brent.
And this is Lacrosse Local.
Hi, my name is Cindy Stuhr. I was born right here in La Crosse, born and raised. I got into painting because I retired from teaching, and I was just kind of looking for a creative outlet. As I was searching, I found an art class offered through the Park and Rec Department at the Northside Beach Center. And it was called Abstract Acrylics. It sounded like something that I could accomplish. So I went, met a very nice gentleman by the name of Bill Eddy, who had been an art therapist when he was a younger man, and now he offers these classes, drawing classes and painting classes through the Park and Rec. Met some wonderful people. And he just kind of actually made me feel like I could accomplish something that I was pleased with. Before then, I never really considered myself artsy at all or creative at all. And so going through his class really helped a lot. We worked on color theory and composition, and I kind of understood how all of that went together. Then, as I was searching for ideas for creating art, I started turning to the internet and looking at what other artists were doing so that I could see some color ideas, see what others thought made a good piece of art versus a not so good piece of art. And as I was searching, I came across something called fluid acrylics. The fluid acrylics is just that. You take acrylic paint and you thin it down with a paint thinner. Now that can be one of many different things. It can be the mediums that are offered through Golden paints or Liquitech paints. Also, it can be something called Floetrol, which you can buy at Menards, which professional wall painters use to thin down the paint when they put them in the sprayers to spray walls. Once you've got your paints, your colors picked out and your paints thinned down, you can actually pour them into a cup, layer them so that they don't all mix together, and then dump them over onto a canvas or a cradled wood panel or even a tile. You can then manipulate that paint in many different ways. I have in the past added something called silicone oil, which actually then creates little bubbles or cells within the paint. I have taken a tool like a palette knife and swiped across the paint, which creates kind of a lacing effect. I have used a hairdryer after you pour the paint on to move the paint around the canvas. I have poured it so that it's in the layers in the cup, and then you pour it so it goes around and around. It's called a tree ring pour, and so then the design just kind of flows from there. And what I'm using now, or what I'm investigating, is something called a bloom technique, which uses actual house paint as the base for your painting, and something called untinted base paint, which you can also buy at Menards. And then I have to send away to Australia for something called Australian Floetrol, which when I add it to the top layer of the paint creates almost a bloom. I put the tile or the canvas onto a cake spinner and I spin it, and then the design just kind of explodes from there. Lots of really pretty cells and lacing, and hopefully a good composition when I'm done.
So on that note, you're talking about your process here. You're talking about what goes into it. Seems like you said, it seems kind of fluid. When you're creating new work, is it planned or is it impromptu, or does it follow a theme or anything, or is it kind of just you go with the flow?
Probably all of those things. I do try to make some kind of a plan before I paint. Something inspires me, a certain color palette or a sunset or something. I do plan out which colors I'm going to use and maybe which technique I'm going to use, but the actual result is very spontaneous. And sometimes those the less planned art pieces turn out the best. Sometimes I do scrape a lot of canvases. I look at what I created and think, no, this is not what I wanted. This is not, doesn't look very nice. So I scrape the paint off and start all over. One of the things I like about my paintings is that the design continues over the edge of the canvas. And so when I finish the painting with either resin or varnish, you don't need to frame the artwork. The artwork is ready to hang when you buy it. As far as themes go, I have just started investigating, kind of coming out with maybe collections of work. I'm, for some reason, fluid painting seems to translate well to bathrooms. When I have an art show and people come in and they always say, oh, this would look perfect in my bathroom. And at first I didn't know if I should have been insulted, because I don't know if I want my art hanging in bathrooms, but then I figured it's probably the most used room in a house. That's where guests need to go if they come and visit you. They wouldn't maybe necessarily go into bedrooms to see art. So I figured my art gets seen a lot. The fluidness of it reminds people of water or oceans, and so it kind of translates to bathrooms. I am investigating another art form, another way to make a fluid art project. I'm using alcohol inks.
So one component that I notice similar to fluid acrylic paint that you're using is that it also looks a lot like in caustic painting. You know, caustic painting using wax and using a blowtorch, and kind of your same similarities of being able to scratch it off, put it back on, build layers and things like that. So for people, you know, in kind of a real quick few sentences, for someone who's never seen your work and maybe even related to caustic, how would you explain it to them?
Yeah, I don't know. Because my work, you know, some artists, you look at their artwork and you can see their style. It's like, you know, oh, that's got to be by this artist or that artist, because I notice the style. Because I'm still relatively new at this, I'm not sure I have a style. So I don't know, like, you know, look for cells if you see my artwork and you'd know it's my artwork, or look for probably the color blue, because I always overuse blue. It's fluid, it's more composition rather than, you know, it's not made to look like something, although people see landscapes and sunsets and flowers and geodes, you know, lots of relating it to things in nature, because just of the way how the paint falls onto the canvas. I do finish my work with resin, which gives it a layer to kind of look through the painting through, which kind of reminds me a little bit of the wax that's added. It makes my artwork shiny, glossy. It also protects the artwork. I don't know how I would explain it, because I don't have a look. I'm still experimenting with so many different techniques that I don't know if it just kind of fits into a whole.
How has the process of your work changed due to COVID? And also, like, what's next for you? So I know I've talked to a few artists, and they've said it's been a very creative time. Of course, it's also been chaos and kind of nuts, but some have said it's been a very creative time. Some people have really taken the time and not done anything, but now they're seeing a reinsurgence. How has the process been for you, and how are you moving forward?
I too, like some of the artists, maybe have slowed down in the amount of work I'm creating, but concentrating on some different ways to be a fluid artist. As I said before, I'm researching alcohol inks and how they are another form of fluid art. I have made landscapes, but what I'm investigating now, and because they take a lot of time and I have a lot of time, is mosaics with alcohol inks. So I have to buy a special kind of paper called Yupo paper, which doesn't let the ink absorb into the paper, lays the ink on top of the paper. And then I cut the paper up into little squares, and I'm making a collection of sunsets over oceans, because they're putsy and I have a lot of extra time. I'm also very thankful that the downtown Main Street has offered the Saturday art markets, and I've been able to participate in those.
So for terms of people maybe following along on your journey with your work, is there anywhere else where people can find out more about you?
Yeah, I do have my art on a Facebook page and an Instagram page. They would look under Cindy Ree Arts, CINDY, period. REE_ARTS for both of those, for the Instagram and the Facebook. And then I also have an Etsy shop, and that's just Cindy Ree Arts.
Lacrosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you would like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at Lacrosse Locals. Subscribe to the Lacrosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We thank you for it.